And thank you very much for joining us here on PM Express. You must have observed that in the last few days, there's been a tussle between government and Moody's, one of the international ratings agencies. They, in essence, have a certification that says, yes, you are credit worthy, no, you are not. And in the last few days, they have given Ghana a serious whipping in terms of our credit worthiness. They're simply saying that we are not credit worthy. I mean, people shouldn't be giving us money. If they do, they're taking a huge risk in doing so. Government has taken this up very seriously. They've taken this to the AU. The AU's organ, the peer review mechanism, has issued a statement. Very unprecedented fight that is ensuing here, with government saying that indeed they are challenging the basis of that. You've heard all that already, but here's the thing. Have you stopped to pause to consider what this means for you, for your pocket? That is what we're going to be doing tonight. We're going to be breaking this down, hopefully for you to understand, and so we can all appreciate why this is such a big deal for government, indeed. Let's start with what the reality is on the ground, because we know right now that the three ratings agencies have Fitch, S&P, Moody's, have all this year, in essence, given us a serious whipping when it comes to whether or not we are credit worthy, whether fundamentally people should be giving us money to run our economy. We'll come to the fact that this economy is an economy that is run on borrowed money because we don't pay enough revenue, government has told us. And so you see that the Fitch is rated as what, B1. S&P is the most favorable of them, but this was a downgrade. This maintained what they did in terms of last year to this year. And the Moody's is the biggest one, because we talk about triple C here, which is a big one, which that the government, of course, is very unhappy about in terms of its impact on us. Now, the reactions have been very swift indeed. We've seen the finance ministry say that they refer this to that there's a bias in the rating that they've talked about, which is a very serious accusation of Moody's. They've also talked about Moody's failed to consider key information that they give to them to consider as part of calculating this. Now, we've talked about President Akufo-Addo himself has taken this up at the AU level, saying that the African countries must guard against these ratings agencies, putting a spanner in our wounds when we are down and kicking us whilst we are down in the midst of the pandemic. And there's this bias theme seem to have continued. In the wake of the president's own, sessions on this, the AU's organ, the Africa Peer Review Mechanism, jumped in. They said they agreed with the concerns of the Ghanaian government as far as Moody's is concerned. And so, of course, they are asking Moody's, in essence, backing government to say, review what you've done because you considered, information that was not complete. Now, the thing I need to do this because it's important to understand when it comes to the ratings agencies. Let's start with Fitch. The historical ratings that has happened over the year. This is not the first time this has happened. But what you'll begin to see in the trend I'm about to show you is that this is the worst it's been in a long, long time. Let's start with Fitch, because this is the best for Fitch. If you look at the Fitch, the B+ for Fitch, this is stable outlook. The rings around it gives us a stable outlook. They gave us in 2013, when it first came onto the scene, rating Ghana, for example, a B+. Why do you need the ratings? Why do you need them? Because I am going to lend you money, right? I need to be sure that you can pay me back. And you need somebody, an independent person, who can tell me who is giving you the money, that if I give you the money, you can pay me back. The independent person will come into your life and will come and assess your ability to pay me back. And they will report back and say, listen, you can pay me back or you cannot. And that's where they come in. So they started off in 2003 and said B+, junk status, but with stable. So that was good. But if you look at that, so we stayed at this for a while, it alternating between, positive outlook to negative outlook for quite a while. But pay attention to what happens when this government came into office. Before they came into office, according to Fitch, the last time they did this was 2014. They gave us a B with a negative outlook. And then right after that, we came to the 2017 when this government came into office. And they gave us still a B, but with a stable outlook. And the government, they were very happy with this because of where we're coming from after the elections of 2016. And they said, listen, well, this is good for us. But look at where we are. We've never been here before. We've never been here before. We've never been here before when it comes to Fitch, right? Fitch is now telling us that we are now B-. First time they've done that, by the way, when it comes to Ghana. And we are also with a pretty negative outlook there, which is a fundamental problem for government. I'll tell you why government cares and why you probably should care also. Let's go to Moody's, and this is the one that has really got government really upset. And remember, their petition that they've written, the concerns and the press release was about Moody's, because Moody's downgrade is the sharpest of the three. Because Moody's is telling us that we are we are CAA1, that's a triple C, that is super junk. In other words, the bond that you float, your ability to pay, you can't pay. You are so down there, there's so much risk around you. If I give you money, you will probably default. That is how bad they are. They're telling that we are. But there's some silver lining there, which is that the outlook is stable going forward. They are projecting that we have some mechanisms to make sure that, well, the economy will probably be stable going forward. But fundamentally, if I'm going to give you money, I'm going to look at what Moody's has said. Now, if you look at S&P is probably the most favorable, because all they've done is to maintain our ratings from 2020 to 2022, in essence to say we are B- and we are also stable. So no problem there. That's why you haven't heard government say much about the S&P one, but they're saying a lot about Moody's. Let's now begin to understand what this means. I've said a bit about this, but fundamentally, if you look at what this is Moody's, very high credit risk. What are they telling the investors? Don't forget one thing, Ghanaian economy, we run on borrowed money. I'll tell you why very shortly. The graphs tell the story. Very high risk, very high risk. If we give you the money, if they give us the money, we might probably not be able, we'll struggle to pay, but that's what they're saying in essence. Junk. What this means they're telling the world is the high interest rates. What it means is that if it's risky to give you money, then it's going to cost you more to borrow, which is in essence what is going to happen to Ghana. So high interest rate. Have you borrowed from the bank before? If somebody tells the bank that you may not pay back, but the bank decides to give you the money, the bank is going to charge you killer interest rates, which is what is happening now to Ghana out there. Higher risk of default. For me, this is fundamentally the apocalyptic scenario when a nation, a sovereign state, is unable to pay back to those who have given it money. It is apocalyptic. The last time it happened to a country, it happened to Suriname recently, but it's happened to Argentina. They began to sell Argentina's assets internationally. That is how bad it is. So we really don't want to get here at all. Then limited access to funds. For a country that runs on borrowed money, if you can't go and borrow more, we are in deep trouble. But that is what it means for the Ghanaian economy. Very, very difficult times indeed on the back of these ratings. Now this picture here, it's in the 2022 budget. This is what tells the story. If you're watching this is what tells the story. Because listen, compensation, everything that we earn as a country, two line items take 72.9% of that. The major one, and for the first time, I'll show you a trend analysis. For the first time, interest payments, what we are paying for the loans that we've taken, the borrowing that we've done, for the very first time, what we are paying all those people who have lent us money exceeds what we pay to you, the workers in the state, including you, TAG, by the way, who are on strike, right? And so you see here, compensation is 35.8 billion, but interest payments is 37.5 billion. By the time we finish these two items alone, we are only left with 27.1% of all the revenue and everything else that we make in this country to do what? To do roads, subsidies, goods, and services. That is how dire it is. Have you asked yourself why it's been a month? Utah, the university lecturers have been on strike, and government cannot agree to pay them what they are asking for. It is because of this particular problem, with all three ratings agencies telling the people out there who give us money that we cannot pay. The cost of this interest payments is going to be high. Pay attention to this. This is the 2022 budget projection. So government had already said that this year they expect to pay 37.5 billion in interest payments alone. But what the ratings agencies have done, in essence, says government is probably going to pay far more than they had projected this year, possibly. And there's already Reuters reports that says that already our bonds are pricing very high, the interest is going up. So with more money to pay interest payments, there's going to be less money for compensation, and there's going to be less money for roads, subsidies, goods and services. If there's less money for compensation, UTAG will not get what they are asking for. The doctors will not get what they are asking for because government can simply not pay you your salaries and your conditions of service you're asking for because it's using more of the money to pay off interest payments because the ratings agencies say it is risky to give money to Ghana, and so if you want to give money to Ghana, you expect that Ghana will pay you a lot more interest rates. That is where the trick is, and that is why government is very, very upset about this. So pay attention to this. It has an impact directly on your pocket. So that is the story here with what we are talking about. Now, look, this is Reuters just on Monday telling us that already. Look at what Reuters says. Ghana's international bond yields, it's 10% there about since fourth quarter of last year. But currently, as we're talking about, it's nearing 13%. Yields, it simply says the interest that we are paying those who have lent us money is now at 13% nearly. This is according to Reuters. So we are beginning to pay more. It's going to cost us a lot more. But here's the trick. It's going to cost us a lot more. But Reuters says Ghana is effectively shut out of the financial markets. So we've been borrowing to pay our interest. We've been borrowing to run the economy for so long, but because of these ratings agencies, ratings and downgrades, we are in effect being priced out of the financial market. So we can't go to borrow anymore. We cannot access it effectively because if you go, you are going to pay killer interest rates. Nobody will want to do that, especially when we are already suffering. So we can't borrow, and we still have a lot to do. We have to pay your fees. We have to pay free SHS. We have to build roads. That is government's word here. And that is why government says they are fighting back. Okay. So we have bonds also issued. And again, this is still Reuters. Bond issued in international capital markets now are falling. There's a fall across the curve with some longer dated debt tumbling nearly 3 cents in the dollar and trading just 70 cents. What it means fundamentally is that a lot of people who are already holding government bonds, who have lent us money, they are dumping the bonds. They don't want it anymore. They are afraid. A few people, some of them are dumping. They say they don't want it because of what Fitch is saying, Moody's is saying, S&P is saying. They are saying they don't want it. But if they don't want it, there is an effect there. The effect is that there's going to be pressure on your foreign reserves. The foreign reserves is what all the foreign exchange in dollars you have stored, which you use, to cover yourself, and that is important. The Bank of Ghana will now have to fall on this to pay off those who are dumping Ghana's bonds that they are holding. They don't want it. They are afraid. It's risky to hold it, so they don't want it. They're giving it away. Bank of Ghana will have to fall on the reserve that we have to give them. What that happens is that you are going to put pressure on the foreign reserve. You put pressure on the foreign reserve at a certain threshold, IMF obviously will be ringing in your head. Government says they're confident in reaction to a Bloomberg report that we can stand on our ground, we can pay, we can meet our obligations to our investors because we have 4 months of import cover. Now, that is going to be affected if we have to pay a lot of those who are dumping. And then we have exchange rate implications also, putting a lot of pressure on the city. But here is the curve here that tells you, tracking for us the interest payments and compensations over time. And look at that. When we started this tracking in 2012, we were doing compensation, paying workers, UTAG, etc. We're spending more of everything we earn as a country, 7.2 billion cedis, and we're spending only 2.4. Pay attention, only 2.4 billion on interest payments. That is 2012. Come to 2020, for the very first time, as we've seen here, it started in 2021 here. We are now beginning to spend more on paying interest than paying for worker salaries. So UTAG, this is the problem here. This is the problem. That's why government says, well, government is struggling to meet your demand because they've not got the fiscal space to do it because there's a stranglehold of Moody's, of Fitch, of S&P, the real implications of this. Now, this tells a whole different story. So percentage of total revenue of interest payments, total revenue that we make as a country, right? 37.31%. So that is interest payments alone is taking that, right? And tax, all the tax you pay, 46.78% is going to pay interest to those who have lent us money. Pay attention to that. That is a pretty key important information to consider here. Now, I also want to factor in this trend analysis. So this is the interest payments versus total revenue over the years. And you begin to see how when you look at the revenue as against interest payments, it's getting worse and worse over the period. Now, here is, for me, the most important part of this conversation. And I want to pay attention. I want you to pay attention to this because this is about the masses. I'm talking about interest. I'm talking about investors. But it's about the masses too. Because government will now be paying more for the interest. Remember that what I showed you, which is now even more than anything else that we can spend our money on as a country. Because government is paying more interest now, because of Fitch's rating, because of Moody's, because of S&P, there's little money for government to do a lot of things, right? Little money for government to cushion you. Little money to pay subsidies. Remember that fuel prices have gone up. There's a cry yesterday on this show by the transport operators that government should try and consider subsidies. Do something to protect us. We have the price stabilization levy. Part of that was to cushion you in times like this. But listen, government is going to now spend far more. It's going to cost them more. Because of that, government can use that money to cushion you in the wake of the fuel prices going up, which, by the way, OMC say it might cross $8, 8 cedi a liter by March. You know why? What happens then? Fuel prices will definitely go up. When fuel prices go up, transport fares will kick in. Now, this is how it's affecting you, by the way, because government is now going to spend far more money just paying interest. Very little to do anything, including cushioning you in times of crisis when the Living Standard Survey says 60+% of you have less income now than you did before COVID. Government cannot cushion you anymore. So when the transport fares go up, government can't do much for you. There's no fiscal space. What happens is, what that will mean in essence is prices of goods and services will go up. Prices of your Kenkey and bread will definitely go up. And this is one of the things that will go up definitely. Kenkey and bread. This one. You see the fish here? This fish used to be sold from what my colleagues did. Well, let's start with the Kenkey. This bottle of Kenkey here. You see here, used to be sold at 1 cedi. 1 cedi. This is last October. Today, this one is 2 cedis. We bought it for 2 cedis. So we have 4 cedis of Kenkey here. So that tells you a story already. Times are hard. 1 cedi in October, 2 cedi in February. Think about that. This is 3 cedis. Is it? 3 cedis. And we used to buy it for what? And last year by June, 1 cedi 50 pesos. 1 cedi 50 pesos. Look at this. 3 cedis. So that is the story. This is going to affect you. Moody's, S&P, and Fitch downgrade directly affecting you. Your Kenkey is going to be affected. That is fundamentally the story I want you to appreciate, because you've been hearing Fitch, Moody's. What does it mean to you? This is what it means to you. It has an impact. Government can't cushion you. Fuel prices are going to go up. They can't do anything because the fiscal space is constricted. And so you're going to be paying more. 1 cedi in October, 2 cedi in February, 3 cedi now. In June, you're paying this for 1 cedi 50 pesos. That's the story of Kenkey, by the way, and I love Kenkey. I'm gone, so you know what I'm talking about. But what about bread? Those of you who like bread, this is bread. Huge loaf of bread. This, by the way, is 10 cedis now. 10 cedis in February. Do you know how much it was just last year in June? The lady we bought it from said last year he was selling it for 7 cedis. Today, she's selling it for 10 cedis. I am not saying it is because directly of Fitch, because that was recently done, by the way. But what I'm saying is, going forward, it is going to get worse if nothing happens about the Fitch and about the S&P and about the others. That is, for me, is a key thing that you need to pay attention to.